Okay, we are live. Welcome to another town hall. It's just two of us right now. Adam and myself are here, so we're going to go ahead and get started, but I assume others will be joining us. It's unusual to have such a small group here, but we'll go ahead and get started and go through our preliminary stuff here, and hopefully others will be joining us shortly. So let me just get my windows organized a bit better here. Okay. All right, so let's see. We'll just go right to our action items. So the first one was for me, and I haven't done this one yet, but I'm going to be redirecting the chapter's email address to our help desk. It's just a matter of modifying some settings and DNS stuff, and I just haven't had a chance to set that up yet. So I'm going to leave that on the list for next week. Take care of that. We talked about getting a meeting together of this emerging leadership team, and I think at this point what we're trying to do is get two meetings together. So we need one meeting just for this sort of emerging group of leaders that we've been talking about to get together, get to know each other, talk about who's focusing on what, make sure that we're not, duplicating efforts, things like that. So just kind of compare notes and agree on who's doing what. Secondly, I think we need a meeting with that same team as well as our friends from Deloitte UK to talk about a project that they were going to take on to help us sort of evaluate some of our online assets, make recommendations for changes to make it easier to navigate, look at our matching platforms and figure out kind of what a good direction to go there is, just kind of help us to figure out our next steps with our online assets and making things a little easier to use. So I think those are two meetings we're trying to arrange. Now I saw some emails, Adam, I think that's for the first meeting, right? Trying to get the leadership team together. Can you give me an update on where that stands?
Yeah, actually, so I created a space for the leadership team. I went ahead and invited each of the individuals, including yourself and John and Rick, just for visibility of the folks who seem to be the decision makers based on my exposures so far, and just trying to establish a space where we can start planning these sessions.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so I put out a call asking people to indicate dates in the next 1 to 2 weeks that would work for a little roundtable discussion, but don't have anything firmed up yet. I might go back to traditional routes and just
I saw that space you created, and I think that's a good idea. We might just need to. It usually takes a little time. I don't have you seen how many people have actually accepted the invite and joined in the space?
It looks like 3.
Okay.
Let me double check, but yeah, I think it was 3.
So it might take a couple of messages. We might want to do it like a follow-up email. Hey, in case you didn't see this, we're going to try to use this space to coordinate. So please, accept your invite when you have a chance. That, we might need to prompt people a little bit more. I think it's a good idea because it allows us to communicate without having to have a common time. Whenever people are available, they can jump in and catch up.
Right.
So I like that idea, but we might need to might take a 2 or 3 attempts to kind of nudge people to jump in there and get involved. I will try to get in there after this meeting and post a little something, even if it's just an introduction, just because I think the more we have people posting in there, it'll encourage people to actually get in and use it. So
sure,
I'll go in and post something.
Yep, that sounds great. Thank you.
That was a good idea. Okay, so we're still working on sort of coordinating amongst that team, and just be aware that as part of our sort of goals there is we want to re-engage with that Deloitte UK team once we kind of have a sense of what we're each focusing on, and we want to get them drawn back in and have a discussion with them. And I think that probably will need to be a meeting so we can actually share screens, look at things, have some specific discussion about what we need to get done. So but that can come later. So let's see if we can get people just kind of talking in that space first.
Okie doke.
All right, so on we go. We got our metrics here for the week, and nothing really jumped out at me as unusual, except for the fact that it was a very likable week on the hub. We had 27 likes. I don't know what that was about, but we had a lot of likable content this week, I guess. Other than that, pretty typical week. So we'll just move on. Some posts of note. Alberto Navata posted a very cool new bike adapter design. This came from e-NABLE Italia. I'm not going to try to pronounce their names, but there's two volunteers listed here, and they shared this really nice looking design, which they print in a TPU so that it's flexible, which makes sense because then you've got this release mechanism that can, pull off, which would be more difficult if it was in a rigid material. So that's a very smart design, looks really nice. And from the comments I saw, it looks like it's tested really well so far. It's working nicely. So that's a very cool design. Oh, inspired by your design, I made a bicycle holder for a 1.5-year-old. Oh, so this is a similar, okay, I see. So he made something for is this for a younger child? I didn't see this one. Printing from the flexible material is more difficult, but it's worth doing. So I'm not fully clear. I can't see from the side, so I can't fully understand how this one is designed. I don't see like that breakaway type mechanism on this one, but maybe that's just because it's not as important with a toddler like this. His arm
Yeah.
would just come out of the socket, I guess, if he fell off. So that might just be a different approach to that. That's what I'm
Hmm.
assuming. Yeah, I assume his arm would just come out if he had to release, but
Yeah, it looks like it's just attached to the bike.
yeah, okay. But this one especially for the older kids, I've seen bike adapters before, but this is probably the nicest looking one I've seen, and I don't know that I've seen one made with the flexible materials, which makes a lot of sense to me. So this is very cool. All right, and then the other one I wanted to share is from Momin Nadim. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that right, and he shared a challenging case where he's seeking a 3D designer to help with this. So I wanted to highlight it for two reasons. Number one, because I like to highlight these challenging cases to see if people have any ideas about how we might approach these, or maybe existing designs that might work. But in this case, I wanted to highlight it for another reason, because and I didn't read the comments here, so maybe somebody already pointed this out, but this is a guy saying, I joined the e-NABLE community yesterday. I'm an electronics engineer and own a 3D printer. Okay, I have no doubt this is a very smart, very capable guy, but my first advice would be probably you don't want to take on a case like this as your very first case with e-NABLE. This looks like a very challenging case. I would strongly encourage this gentleman to learn how to make some of these standard devices first, even if it's not for somebody specifically, just learning the fabrication and assembly process, getting some of the badges, and then ideally working with somebody that could use a standard type of device just so they can understand the fitting process, the sizing process, etc., before moving on to something much more challenging like this. That would just be my suggestion. If you still want to take a stab at it, by all means, go for it. But this is a challenging case, very challenging. You always want to try to not prevent them from being able to use the anatomy that they have, which in this case looks like it might be a thumb. But at the same time, you want to, build something around that would provide better functionality than what they have. And this is a very custom type of device here, I think, that you're going to need. So it looks like there has been some good discussion. They're talking about getting hold of a 3D scanner, which is good. That's going to definitely be helpful for this. Yeah, so it looks like this David Clark is engaged and may be interested in helping. That would be a good thing. I guess that's about all there is right now. I just wanted to bring that up mainly with a word of caution. Be careful about starting off with really challenging cases like this, but I am glad to see that there is at least one other volunteer that's jumped in to help here. So that might be enough to make for a successful outcome. I don't know. Any other thoughts on that, Adam?
Yeah, and this is something that I'd like to explore in more detail as the leadership team comes out, and also as the healthcare roundtable group starts to hopefully get a little bit more active and more coordinated in terms of working with the individual's care team, if they have one,
Yes.
to try to identify where the functionality is needed. And I think that one of the things that would really benefit us, and again, I think this is a much larger discussion than we probably have space for today's town hall, but I think that there is the sort of entrenched community. I shouldn't say entrenched, that has a negative connotation. There's the existing community O&P professionals and physical therapists and medical providers who I think we could stand to try to find opportunities for collaboration with more broadly, and making part of our process a more committed approach to contacting those people who are attached to the people in need of devices, I think could go a long way to increasing e-NABLE's legitimacy and the degree to which we're embraced by the
Absolutely.
medical community.
Absolutely.
In addition to helping the outcomes of the individuals in question, I think that on a broader scale could be beneficial.
I don't want
Sorry,
to put you
Jeremy.
on the spot here, Adam, but did you have a chance to see the recording of the recent meeting we had with the folks in Brazil?
I didn't know.
Okay.
I'm sorry. No.
No, no problem. Like I said, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I definitely hope you'll have a chance. If Ben didn't get you a copy of that, I can find the recording and share it with you. But I mention them because I've always been so impressed with what the e-NABLE folks in Brazil have been doing. And they're not the only ones. There are other regions that have a similarly robust process, but they have done an excellent job in part because the laws in Brazil require them to work with medical professionals and actually get a prescription before making one of these devices. And so as a result of that, they've actually built a whole process that incorporates working with those medical professionals, including how they engage with them, throughout the process, the back and forth, the fitting process, the follow-up process. They've had an opportunity to build a very robust process that incorporates the medical community. And I wonder if I have no doubt that you could come up with a just as good of a process, but as opposed to recreating the wheel, I hope you can have a chance to look at. They said they already have that process well documented. So
Oh no, I always prefer copy and paste
yeah, so I want
when
to
it comes
get
to
you
putting these
plugged in
things
with
together.
them. Which is
That's fantastic, and that was mentioned last week, and I just no, I dropped the ball, and I
no,
had
no,
to check
no.
that out.
I probably need to get you a link, so I'll try to do that after this meeting. But it would
Awesome,
be worth checking out, and we can have some follow-ups with them. They also have a very robust app that they built, which is a web-based sort of a reporting sort of dashboard, but also has a mobile phone app that they've built where you can use that in the field to sort of manage your cases and do everything that they need to do. Now they had to take that app offline a while back because they had some staff changes and I guess there were some privacy concerns. And so they had to kind of lock things down before bringing it back online. So it's offline right now, but they did give us a demo in the past and it was very impressive.
great.
Built. So there's so much good work that's been done in Brazil, in
See,
France, and yeah.
that's awesome. I had no idea. That's one of the things that I have on my sort of my expanding like things I definitely don't know enough about, but would like somebody who knows a little bit more than I do to look into it. Whether if we could devise some kind of e-NABLE app that just has the bare bones. It has the release form. It has the a camera a feature so that we can get a quick image, or even if there were a way to take some quick measurements on a picture that we're taken, and then just capturing some simple biographic and anthropometrics so that we could, all of that would then get linked to the hub and we could create the case on our phone. Man, I think that would be amazing.
I tend to agree. And I think that's the direction that we've been heading. That's why we were going to try to engage with the Deloitte team to sort of analyze
Awesome.
what we have currently, because we've come to a similar conclusion that the e-NABLE Web Central app is probably just overly complicated. It's not easy enough to use, especially for new members. And it doesn't necessarily encourage the type of process and workflow that we want now that we've kind of realized is
Yeah,
where we
it
can
was
head.
confusing to me. It was hard for me to ascertain the sort of nature and structure of, e-NABLE, I guess, is kind of a hat on top of the community, right? And the fact that all the different chapters are effectively independent, and there are sort of different sites and avenues that you can access different pieces of e-NABLE. It was a little hard for me to understand about where my starting point should be.
Yeah, that's exactly the challenge, and you're not the only one. So that's where the Deloitte team was really going to help, is looking at that
Perfect.
onboarding kind of new user journey and how do people find their way, and where are people getting stuck, and how can we make it easier. And so there's a lot of work to be done, but I think we have a better sense now of what works and doesn't work. We just need to figure out kind of what our next steps are and how to build that easier to use a system. So I definitely want you involved in those discussions. And I think we've got a good starting point with that space you created. So we'll get some discussion going there and then pull the Deloitte
Perfect.
into that. Oh, and by the way, as a side note, if you wouldn't mind, I think you've already, so we have a list that we've kind of been building here as far as kind of the emerging leadership team. And I assume you've invited all these people to that space.
I neglected to invite Saif.
No
I'm
problem.
sorry, Dr. Savage. Saif. I apologize. Forget how her first name is pronounced.
No worries. And let me ask you to go ahead and invite her, and also let's invite Ed Grieg. I'm going to put his name down in here for you.
Okay.
He's the leader of the Deloitte UK team. So it'd be good to have him in there as well, so he has visibility into these discussions. So, and you'll find him if you just, you'll find him in the hub if you look him up. Just note the spelling there. It's EIG from the last name.
Got it. And they are invited.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got a good start there on those discussions. Where was I up here? Okay, so we talked about the kind of the posts of note of the week. So let's talk about events. This is where I usually like to have Ben or John kind of walk us through what's coming up next. I guess I'll do my best. Today we have the new member meetup, which I assume Rick is going to be running for us. I know he did say that he wasn't going to be able to join the town hall today, but I hope he's going to be back in time for the new member meetup because I think he's supposed to be running those now. Maybe I will try to jump in on this one just to make sure in case nobody else is available to host it.
Ben did ask me to be present for that. If nobody else is there, I suppose I can run it. but yeah, if you had time to hop in as well, just make sure I don't miss anything. That would be appreciated.
Absolutely. Oh, and I'm just seeing a couple of text messages here in our chat. Ryan Doyle says, good morning. 3 months into my recovery, lost the tip of my right thumb, still swollen, hurts like crazy. Yeah, that sounds painful. Sorry to hear that, Ryan. Yeah, hopefully you have a full and quick recovery. I'm sorry to hear that. At least I don't know if this is bad to say, but at least it was just the tip. Hopefully you're able to recover fully. Okay, so as far as meetings go, I'll just pull up our monthly list here. So let's see, what are we on here? The 19th. So we've already done the bionic design. We already did the chapters leading. We already did e-NABLE education. So it looks like today is the new member meetup. And oh, Adam, you're guest presenting. Okay, excellent.
Right.
Awesome. Well, then I definitely want to try to make it for this one. And hopefully we'll have Rick there as well. And then that leaves us with the focus follow-up workshop next week. And it looks like we're going to have Kyle Reeser. That's another good one. Kyle, for those who don't know, has recently been made the global ambassador for the Creality 3D printer brand. And so they are looking to kind of send him around the world, getting people excited about what you can do with 3D printing. And that led in part to his current mission in Tanzania, which he's going to be talking to us about, I guess, here. So that should be a great presentation. Okay, so those are the events we have coming up. And it's still just you and me, Adam. So let's start with you. Let's have you give us your updates. At least we'll have a recording then that Ben and John and others can watch. So go ahead and talk us through what you've been up to.
Sure, and apologies in advance. The kiddos are running around upstairs, so if there's some background noise. Right, let me pull up my notes here. So the Afghanistan initiative, lots of this is starting to get pretty exciting. So I've been in touch with my contact in Afghanistan in Kabul. Just as a reminder, he is the director of the only functioning orthopedic hospital in Afghanistan right now, and they have they're just overwhelmed. They have no materials. They have very limited resources. They have very limited staff because people who have money, not all of them, but many of them were able to get out of the country.
Did you say the only functioning hospital in Afghanistan? Or
the only functioning orthopedic surgery center in Afghanistan. So they are overwhelmed by cases right now. They've got a huge number of amputees. It might be the highest density population of amputees in the world at the moment, or at least new amputees. So it's a pretty dire situation, and it's one of the reasons I'm really anxious to get moving and start building up some momentum toward sending assistance there. We had a really productive conversation because internet is so choppy on the ground there. I had a WhatsApp conversation with and again, I'm not naming names, but
Yeah,
with
yeah.
my contact there and my colleague who is his who's a good friend of his and colleague who's from Afghanistan, who's kind of been our go-between. But we ironed out some details, made sure that we aligned interests. He was telling me that he is really hoping, he understands that we primarily deal in pediatric cases and primarily deal in upper extremity amputees. I let him know that we do have some teams who have fabricated lower extremity devices in the past. I didn't want to overcommit, but did let him know that that's something that has been done by the community, that there has been some orthotics production by the community as well. But there is a huge need for generic orthotics. And I wanted to kind of put that out there as a bug in this community's ear, that if you have any experience with that, or if that's something that interests you in addition to just building hands, not to be reductive, building hands is amazing. But in addition to building prosthetic hands, if you are interested in building just some generic orthotic tools, those could be mass produced and shipped once we get the logistics figured out, and it would be tremendously helpful. Speaking of logistics, that's really the big one. The contact on the ground, the director of that orthopedic hospital, he is currently exploring avenues of discussion with the ICR, the International Red Cross, the WHO, and UNICEF. They have planes, or at least plane, that bring in supplies almost daily. However, we would have to partner with them in an official capacity, more likely than not, in order to make use of those planes to ship things in. My understanding is, or at least my impression is, that the easiest route would be if we were able to get some kind of global buy-in from our community, and we started getting more teams building things en masse. Then probably the best course of action would be to build and assemble, ship to a single location, probably to one of us in the US, and then from that location ship out in regular shipments to recipients there. The other, and I apologize for blasting through this, just trying to get
No,
through
please.
these notes.
Yeah.
The other primary consideration is that, for my own sake, for the sake of due diligence, I think that we need to get a little bit more of our infrastructure in place, building up cases, assigning case numbers to recipients. It's not going to be because we won't have a person on the ground. Assuming, I'm speaking with a lot of assumptions right now, so bear with me. But assuming that we move forward with this, and assuming this is something that the community supports and people get on board with, if we are able to produce a large number of hands, then we're going to need to do some kind of reference number for each case, and see if we can get specific chapters or specific individuals to be responsible for specific recipients and track them over time, so that as maintenance is required or new hands are required, we know who to contact to procure those first before looking elsewhere. The last thing that I wanted to say is that I think that this would be just a tremendously helpful thing. I think this would help a lot of people who had nothing to do with the conflict there, but were still horribly affected by it, and now can't leave the country for treatment because the borders have been effectively closed. Assuming we can get everything together, assuming we can find a logistics path to get shipment out, assuming we can get our framework in place so that we're able to track cases and start getting an actual list for visibility, to make sure that we know where things are going and when. Once we've gotten all of that at a sort of cadence, what I'd really like to do down the line, in the longer term, is see about procuring some resources for them to make, effectively a COBBLE, an e-NABLE COBBLE chapter. Seeing about sending a 3D printer and filament that way, which of course would require funds from e-NABLE to obtain that. Obviously not first steps and not what we're looking at immediately, but just giving this hospital and the staff there some means to produce these devices themselves and some training, I think could go a long way.
So let me just fill in, if you don't mind, I
Yeah.
think there's two different things that will come into play here that just from our history that I'll point out. Number one is there's been a fair amount of discussion over the last couple of years as far as how to what extent can we be effective in helping people by making devices remotely,
Mhm.
generic devices, scale them, in some standard scale, and then shipping them off to somebody and putting
Mhm.
them on, as opposed to working with somebody directly, customizing the device for them, et cetera. What I'm getting at is a past volunteer put forth the sort of theory. His position was that we really don't succeed most of the time when people just make devices and ship them off, that usually they don't end up fitting right, they don't end up getting used. And the cases where we do see success are where you're working with them in person, doing the fitting, doing the follow-up, et cetera. And so my only question here would be, and I think the medical professionals are the key. Can we get them trained to the point where the doctors there will be able to be involved in sort of customizing as needed, maybe doing some thermoforming to help these things fit better. Uh,
Exactly. So
so,
that's why I'm not as concerned as I would be in another
okay,
situation. What we have is a group of trained medical professionals who just don't have the ability. On site, there are orthotists and prosthetists who are making do, but if
got it.
they had access to this, these materials, these base hands, and I guess the other thing is that what I'm talking about is not producing these things without any data. Ideally, there would be photos, there would be
Right,
measurements
right.
that would
Okay,
drive the manufacture of these devices initially. We
gotcha.
ship
So
them out, obviously.
each volunteer would be making a device for a particular person, doing their best to
Exactly.
size it for that person. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, that
That's
makes a
right.
big difference. And that combined with having those medical contacts, the prosthetists on site, I think that will ensure success.
Right.
The other aspect that I wanted to mention that you're kind of touching on here is something else that we've talked about, which is this idea of, I don't know, call it a makerspace in a box. This
Hmm.
idea of basically coming up with a template sort of recipe of, when we're ready to spin up, a new e-NABLE sort of facility in a new area, what do we need? A very detailed sort of recipe of, obviously you need a facility, and what kind of requirements are there for the facility? You need stable power, you need, running water, what are those things that you need? We need a 3D printer. We need to have, the different materials that they need to make and customize these things, the training aspects of, how to get them up to speed, and we haven't thought through what all of those ingredients are even, but this idea of coming up with a well-documented sort of recipe that includes sourcing guidelines, what we need to buy, how to get it shipped there, just everything, so that when this time comes where we need to spin up a new, makerspace, whether it be in Kabul or somewhere else, we can just, pull the trigger and, start working our way through the steps.
Right.
We haven't really documented that, is what I'm saying. So that might be a good opportunity to move forward on that objective as well.
Perfect. Yep. That sounds wonderful. And I think that there is such an immediate need. It's hard to sort of pause and say, well, hold on, we need to make sure that we have things together on our end
Of course.
before we just start
Well, it
committing.
might go the other way.
Um,
You might just build this one out and then back that into the sort of the documentation for the next one.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think this is where, working with the team in Brazil and looking at what they've done and how they've worked within the medical community, and how they're
That's
able to
right.
operate in that framework.
And
You know,
Kyle's presentation next week, because he essentially just
exactly.
did this. He went to Tanzania and built up this new capability and helped them get started. So I think hearing about what he went through will be very relevant as well.
Yep,
Uh,
that's right.
Juan Manon says, wouldn't a generic device enable the care provider to introduce the device to a recipient to determine if it's a potential solution? Fair enough. Yeah. So that's usually part of what we do. At the beginning of this, relationship, I have no doubt that we would send a handful of devices to these doctors just so they have some samples on hand. They can
That's a
see
great
how
idea.
they can see how they move. They can, and those would be available for them to show to these prospective patients so they have an idea of what we're talking about here. Absolutely. We would want them to have some samples that they could show them. But I assume, do you have any idea, Adam, of like what is most common here? I mean, are these mostly amputations that we're talking about? Or are they typically, wrist type amputations? Are there any kind of commonalities that we know that we're dealing with here?
So that's what I'm working on right now with my doctor on the ground. He has sent me a list of generic device needs. He has indicated that they could be able to gather information on as many of as 20 to 30 amputees per week
Okay.
to draw to our attention. So a pretty large number,
I mean,
and a pretty steady flow. But
if these are amputees, and I have to assume, given the where we're talking about here, that these are mostly due to violence,
explosives, right?
I have to assume that most of these are going to need arm devices, not hand devices, because most of them are probably not going to have functioning wrists. At least that's my guess. But I guess we'll have
Right. I think it'll vary, and I really don't want to engage in too much guesswork, just because
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
These are crush injuries. This is explosive damage. This is a lot of stuff. In
Gotcha.
addition to the sort of endemic causes of amputation
Okay.
that exist outside of wartime. That those
Yeah.
are still happening too. Circulatory issues and diabetes and all that stuff.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I think that the only other thing I wanted to mention, which I believe is worthy of consideration and discussion here at some point, is that there's also a huge number of adults who could make use of these devices. I know that's not typically the scope of what we do, but I just wanted to kind of put that forward as a potential avenue to maybe help a larger demographic of people.
Absolutely.
If that were
Honestly,
something we could
Adam, it
accommodate.
really is. I don't know if it's an equal part of what we do these days, but the idea that we make devices for kids, that's really, that's going 10 years back. That's how we started. It was mostly
Okay,
making these for
great.
kids, but no, we really don't limit it to children anymore. We've discovered
Great.
as we moved past the US and started getting in other countries, it became clear quickly that there are plenty of other people with different needs. Maybe they don't want a colorful superhero device, but they want one
Well,
that's
you
going to
don't
let
know.
them do basic things. And so yeah, we're definitely equally open to helping people of all ages. Not a
Okay,
problem.
that's great. Yeah, so I'll be sure to communicate that as well. I wasn't sure whether or not that was that was central to our mission. So
It is. It
that's
definitely
great.
is. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Great. Okay, so that's Afghanistan. Anything else here you want to cover from your notes?
Just some general housekeeping things. I'm working on a number of initiatives in addition to the Afghanistan project. For anyone listening, I have created in the forum and outreach and advancement space. It's pretty bare bones right now, but I do have a link to a Google Sheet that provides a high level outline of what I'm working on these days.
Excellent.
A couple of things that I'm interested in, just to kind of give the highlights in addition to some details about the Afghan initiative. I'm toying around with the idea of some kind of partnership between rehabilitation hospitals and centers that are in communities that have publicly accessible makerspaces, trying to see if e-NABLE can sort of broker or facilitate some kind of handshake agreements between the therapists who run these rehab centers and the people who are running these maker labs. I'm going to run a little test kitchen here in Kansas City. We've got the what is now called Ability KC, which, full disclosure, is my former employer, and Union Station, which has a makerspace. I'm going to see if we can get any kind of functioning arrangement between the two to print orthotics devices in hands, to see whether or not there is a way that can be maintained by sort of having a therapist-led partnership with this lab that is right down the street.
Fantastic.
I think could be pretty cool. And if it works, that could be something that could be spun out across the country in any areas where those organizations are
Got it.
geographically nearby.
Adam, just a quick note. Evan and I both just tried to access this spreadsheet that you linked in here, and it looks like we need to modify the permissions so that anybody
Oh
with the
shoot!
link can view.
I thought I made it public. All right, thanks for letting me know. I
Yeah.
will. I'll look at that. I'm the worst about
No
that.
worries.
I'll take a look.
And forgive my ignorance, but clarify for me what you mean when we talk about orthotic devices. Are we talking about like braces, or what exactly are we talking about there?
So it's a huge, yeah, great question. It's a huge category of things. So it's
Okay.
everything ranging from like braces and simple, simple tools to help facilitate either a healing process or some kind of functional activity. For example, I would call like the bike mount that you showcased at the beginning of this
Hmm.
call somewhere in between a prosthesis and an orthosis,
Oh, okay.
especially the one that's mounted on the bike itself. It's a tool that helps to shore up some kind of functional limitation. So a shoe insert, for example, is an orthotic device. You know, something to help to correct for flat feet. Right. That's a
Yep.
very simple orthotic device. So an occupational therapist could, in my mind, where I see this going is could work with someone who is experienced with CAD programs and say,
Mhm.
this is what the patient needs. We really don't have the tools on hand, or at least the tools that we have on hand aren't quite cutting it. Could we print something that helps them, helps to facilitate whatever activity they're trying to do?
Absolutely.
Um, so that's kind of
There
where I see
was,
this
I'm
going.
probably not going to find it here quickly, so I might have to follow up, but there was an organization that had shared a really nice 3D printable brace design that we were looking at
Mhm.
for potentially for helping people like in Afghanistan and other, but I'll have to find the design, but it looked like this type of thing. And the reason something like this is appealing is there's the potential for something like
Yeah,
this to be printed like flat, and then all the doctors would have to do is thermoform it, apply
right.
some heat, and just kind of wrap it around, and so they can be pretty easily customized on site. So something like that would be really easy for our folks to print. You just need a
Yeah, there.
flat
I'll,
bed.
I'll tell you, probably the reason I'm with e-NABLE is because of a company that I believe called themselves Gecko Skin.
Okay.
Gosh, this is back in like 2013. I want to say I was a student at a clinic, and a sales rep came in and brought basically what you're showing there, that brace with the sort of web design around a
Hmm.
wrist, and showed how they do a 3D scan of a
Oh yeah,
person's
that's what they're
hand.
doing here.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. And then they can print this highly. I believe what they were doing was showing how it could replace hard casts. Like for a broken bone.
That's right. Yeah, that's
Um,
what it looks like.
yeah, and that's really where my interest in 3D printing came from.
Hmm.
So that's interesting you showing that here, because that's, that kind of takes me back to to
It
the
is
start of my
interesting.
interest.
I honestly, I'm a little surprised that I haven't seen more of this in the community, because it really does seem like a good fit for 3D printing, and
So
these sort of cast alternatives.
yeah, I've got concerns about. Yeah, I I don't know enough about it to speak intelligently about it. My
Yeah. Okay.
initial impressions are that maybe it doesn't quite do the job they want it to,
Okay.
but it just doesn't provide the full level of support that like a plaster cast or more modern materials might do. But
Sure. Well, and that's
yeah,
something
I'm
that,
not an expert there.
but you're certainly more of an expert than me. That might be interesting to explore on a materials basis, because I could see if something like this was printed in a, I don't know, a PLA or an ABS, that might not
Mhm.
be ideal, but maybe like a polycarbonate that has really high rigidity and
Sure.
strength or something like that. I wonder if it would be worth playing with to see if with the right material you might get good results with something like this. But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
interesting for
Definitely.
sure. Well, I think your conversations are going to help us get better clarity on what exactly the need is and where we should be focusing. So that's great.
Well, and that kind of brings me to another item I'm working on, which is this healthcare and rehabilitation roundtable, trying to get more people who are healthcare providers in the e-NABLE community, sort of in one space to talk about what they've been seeing and where we might be able to help steer e-NABLE's policies in terms of making sure that we're aligning with the needs of people and also what I was referring to earlier, making sure that we're collaborating with the care team to meet the needs of the individuals who are receiving devices. I think would go a long way to being more closely embraced, I think, and
Yeah.
seen as a viable organization. Other things that I'm looking at, seeing if we can kind of expand our knowledge base. I know that's basically, it sounds like that's what Deloitte is going to be doing with us. seeing how we can better arrange the information in the website, make it more accessible. One thing that I really want to make sure that we are doing, especially, and maybe the Afghanistan initiative is a good test project for this, but making sure we have some kind of checklist, some kind of just, devices that are sent out need to meet these requirements. I know that we have the check process for a person to be accepted as a chapter in e-NABLE. But I just wanted to make sure that if we don't have something like that today, just some kind of standard, like minimum quality check to make sure
Absolutely.
that things are functioning as possible, that can be attached
That is
to the
again,
documentation.
that is again an area that some of our groups and chapters have done a very good job on. So it's going to
Great.
be a matter of finding which ones and getting a hold of. For example, I know Maria Escuela, who is one of our chapter leaders, runs a partner organization, and they have developed it was in a spreadsheet form, but it was a very detailed, robust kind of
Perfect.
QA checklist process that they might
Well,
be.
and that's what I'm referring to with the knowledge base, is making sure that materials that are developed are easily shared and
Exactly.
accessible, so that they
Right.
can be applied broad
And that's
spectrum.
what we
That's
haven't,
great.
yeah, we haven't done a good job on the sharing side, but they're out there. So I think the challenge is just going to be collecting what's been built and making
Yeah.
them available. So there's like I said, Maria would be one that we could reach out to see if they can share theirs. I'm pretty sure some of those more mature chapters that I mentioned, like France, Brazil, and probably a couple of others, they probably have very similar QA checklists that they could share. So we can reach out to some of them as well. And I
Okay.
think find most of what you need has already been built.
Okay, perfect. The only other thing that I wanted to mention for today's call is sorry, I'm distracted by a work question. All right, I'm off Teams and I'm back.
No problem.
Uh, the question of visibility, and this is what I mentioned about social media and possibly leveraging TikTok.
Yes.
I just putting this out there. I've also created a space on the hub for sharing social media, video files and pictures. If you have a release uh, uh, for a recipient of the device, a photo release, so that their image can be used in promotional materials and the like, please feel free to drop both the release file and those images or video files in that section of the hub. It is called, I believe, just social media planning.
Yep, I've got it up here.
Okay, great. Yeah, so if you could just drop those there if you have it. Also, if you have experience in video editing, or if you just watch a lot of TikTok, feel free to reach out to me on the hub, and I'd love to get your insight. I've been trying to familiarize myself. I've been using the recommended video editing tools. It's pretty easy, but I also recognize my own limitations and would love to run it past some people who are maybe a little bit more savvy on that front than I am. So if you do have an interest there, and if you have some time to spare, please feel free to reach out, because I could really use the help.
Sounds good. In fact, we never really established a clear date on this because there's so many different sort of events in our history to go by. But by most accounts, we are in the midst of our 10-year anniversary here, as far as
Oh, wow.
when the first sort of 3D printed device was made. So what we had talked about a while back, earlier in the beginning of the year, was, as opposed to trying to pull some big event together, which is always hard, especially with an ongoing pandemic, we thought maybe we would do kind of what you're doing here, collect videos and photos from the community, including not just videos of the recipients, but videos, little video clips from different members of the community talking about their experience of why e-NABLE has been meaningful to them, and that sort of thing. And basically put together a montage in celebration of
Exactly.
10-year
That would be
anniversary.
amazing.
Yeah, so this would be a great way to move forward towards that.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
So any pictures and videos from the last decade, please
Okay.
feel free to drop them there.
Hey, John. Welcome. He's not hearing us yet. Okay, so tell me more about TikTok. How's that going?
Not well.
Really? Okay. What's going on?
Oh, it's fine. It's just like I said, it's not my forte.
Yeah, it's
Um,
certainly not mine either.
yeah, which is why
Oh,
I'd love anyone who's a little bit more experienced there to lend a hand.
Yeah.
Really, I need video files. I need source files to
Okay.
get a sense for how this would be done, and I have none.
Okay. Well, so now we've
So
got the collection bucket here. We need to get people to start dropping them in there.
exactly.
I'll have to think. I don't have much. I know I have the one video I did with an adult Jose Delgado years back when I got started with e-NABLE. That turned into a Fox News thing. So that video has always been shared publicly, but I don't know how useful that would be. It's not our typical sort of target demographic.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good start. We just need my only comment here would be when you create a space like this, it's always about there's got to be some promotion. You're going to have to post things like in the main forum and not just once. You're going to have to like repeatedly invite people to share their
Sure.
videos and photos here. You're going to have to really push people to contribute. A single invite just unfortunately is going to get kind of lost in the noise of the hub.
Yeah, that's going to be the same rule for putting videos on TikTok too, and it's very much not in my nature to to pester. So
you and me both.
gonna have
Well,
to
we can
power through
enlist,
it.
we can maybe ask Ben to help us with that and
Yeah.
others, but it'll take some time, but it's a good start.
Okay, great.
Are you hearing
you.
us now, John? Still not hearing us. Okay. All right. Well, so thank you for those updates. And again, for everything you're doing, Adam, really tremendous.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, and I've been waiting for a chance to do something like this for a long time, and I haven't had the bandwidth, and I'm
Nice.
going to make
Nice.
use of it while I do. So,
All right. You with us now, John? Sounds like you're with us twice.
now I'm with you once, I hope.
All right. We're actually just kind of getting towards the end here, John. We've got some great updates from Adam. I hope you'll have time to watch at least some of the recording later, but I guess let me pause and ask you if you have anything to share with us or anything that you wanted to talk about today, since we're down to our last 10 minutes here, John.
No, I'm sorry I missed it, but I'm glad I can catch up, and I will do it. I've been keeping an eye on what you've been doing, Adam, and I think it's really terrific.
Yeah.
I think
thanks.
you're going about it very well. No, I
John, did you get the invite to this new e-NABLE leadership space that he set up?
I don't know if I did.
So go ahead
as
and
you can
join.
tell.
I thought I did. Let me send another.
No, you may well have.
Yeah, it's called e-NABLE Leadership Team. Just go ahead and join that or accept the invite when you have a chance. We've only had only a few people have accepted so far, so I just wanted to
Cool.
try to get all this in there, and that'll
That's
be
great.
that might be easier than trying to coordinate a Zoom meeting with everyone. We can start the discussion going in there, and we'll invite Ed Grieg into there as well, so that he has some visibility into what's going on, and that should give us a start.
Excellent.
I set
All
some
right.
top-notch clip art for the banner. So
Very nice. Yes, I like it. I like it. That's what I would do too. I usually go and get something from oh, what is that icon site now? I can't even remember. The Noun Project. Use that all the time for those.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
it's a well-chosen icon.
It is.
It says a lot.
thanks.
All right, so we talked about the potential project with Deloitte. We're going to try to get Ed plugged into that new space to get some discussion going. Next week, we'll have a presentation from Kyle about his project in Tanzania. So that'll be the focus follow-up next Friday. That'll be very informative. Might have some helpful insights for what we're trying to do in Afghanistan too. I did an interview recently with Rick Williams for 3D Universe Untethered, and that is now finished and uploaded, and I just have to push the go live button, which I will do right after this meeting. So that will be posted in the hub within the hour. It's a good, we had a good chat. And for those of you who want to get to know Rick a little bit more and his history and the work he's up to, it's less than an hour. I think it was about 45-minute video, worth checking out. And I think that's about all I have for today. I don't want to go into the rest of these. These were from before. So let me just ask once more if anyone else here has anything you want to chat about real quick before we wrap up.
I'm all set.
Okay. Well, thanks, everyone. I hope to see some of you for the new member meetup just over an hour from now. Adam will be giving us a special presentation. And otherwise, we'll see you next week. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.